Okay, I'm gonna put my picture up because I'm going to reduce this. You're not going to be able to see me, but I wanted you to get a good look at me before I go, just to make it more personal. Um, and um, this talk is celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Martinez Residency, teaching primary care medical school graduates. Um, and we'll break it down. Today, I'm only going to cover the first 50 years. I'm going to leave that to somebody else um, to take it up from the year 2000. Um, as most people know, we were a GP residency uh, until 1975, and we converted to family practice as of 1976. Um, uh, and so that makes today's uh, talk the 75th anniversary. Um, just a little background to set the mood. The First County Hospital, basically a sanitarium, probably TB patients mostly. Um, uh, I want you to notice the eucalyptus trees on the hill. They're still there. They can still be seen. 1914, the refinery came to town, and they were one of the motivators for building the county hospital. Um, Before 1914, there were two colorful doctors. I'm going to propose that Dr. Degnan is the third one, but here's the two. This is Dr. John Strenzel, a Polish immigrant, came here in 1852. Could say a lot, but just I want to say he built this house. This is Big Daddy. And this is his daughter, uh, Louie. And when Big Daddy died, his daughter and this guy, John Muir, moved in. Um, they when they got married, he was 40, she was 30. Very little prospects, but Muir came and worked the farm because Strenzel, in addition to being a doctor, was a horticulturalist. And these are the daughters of Wanda. One of them is Wanda, where many residents walked. This is a photo of Louie as a young girl taking the vegetables and fruits to a market in Martinez, where they would be loaded onto a ferry. You can see there are a lot of boats in the harbor. Um, and you pass this mural many times. This is a six piece mural giving the history of Martinez um, underneath Highway 4. This is the family burial site, and this is Big Daddy. Louis and John Muir are buried over here. This is just a little south of John Swett Elementary School, um, south of the freeway. Um, Other colorful doctor, John Marsh, but he really wasn't a doctor. All he had done was apprentice to an army surgeon in Minnesota. He'd gone to Harvard, but never medical school. And he fell in love with the Indian maiden and started running guns to the local tribe. He was found out and fled to Mexico, which at that point was called Alta California. Uh, he arrived in the 1830s, became successful, big ranch out by Brentwood, built this house, which still stands and is in the long, tedious process of becoming a state park. Um, so this hospital lasted until 1954. Uh, this picture of the hospital was given to me by the family of the doctor that first came to this hospital, and that was Dr. Merrithew. He was there for over 35 years. Um, and he retired, and his successor was George Degnan, who also became the county medical officer. And of course, Dr. Degnan is the one who founded the residency in 1950. So he had been overwhelmed, and after 3 years of working alone, he needed what he called slave labor. Um, he became he was residency director until 1970, a 20-year run. He resigned completely from the county in 1980, but he returned to the health arena in the 1990s. As we'll see, it was a very controversial and a dramatic return. He died in 1994. Um, he was succeeded by Jim Lynch, and then Jay Aiken, who holds the longevity record. Um, uh, he's unable to come to the reunion. And we have all these others who followed in his footsteps who'll be on the panel later this morning. This is George Degnan. I'm not going to give his bio. I'm going to make a separate presentation of his very interesting bio. So, in a nutshell, he attends Berkeley on a football scholarship. Uh, he graduates and went to McGill Medical School. There's a lot of colorful things that happened to him while he was in medical school. Um, uh, you could argue that he was the first step in the residency program's global awareness. Um, and so, being in Canada, and you'll see he spent 7 years in Britain during World War II. You could argue that he was the first link in the chain of global awareness, and thanks to Steve Marin for making these slides and sharing them. Um, so he comes back from McGill. He's had a very busy fourth year, which climax in the summer before, in a period before he starts the residency with a big San Francisco wedding to a prominent socialite. And off he goes to medical school. Uh, at the wedding, his new father-in-law gives him a present, a lifetime membership to the St. Francis Yacht Club, um, which explains when we graduated from the residency, we'd go over and Everyone at the St. Francis Yacht Club knew George Degnan because he had this lifetime uh, membership. Of course, he became an avid sailor. Um, so he quit after 1 year to train as a surgeon in Britain. And the dean of the UCSF um, med school asked them, George, are you hearing voices? This was told to me by the Degnan family. And he was. His father-in-law was Jewish, as was the family that he married into. And they were passing on what they were hearing about what was going on in Germany. Of course, his new wife was ambivalent about him leaving because she was pregnant with a daughter that George would not see until she was age 7. So off he goes. He does a crash course in surgery with a special emphasis on trauma, of course. And he is then stationed in London until the end of the war. Um, and you can see a time of crisis. In 1946, he's certified by the Royal College of Surgeons after a fellowship in London. Again, thanks to Steve Marin. So he returns in 47 to relieve an overwhelmed Dr. Merrithew. There's a huge medical need now. The population has exploded. You have oil refineries in Martinez and Richmond. You have steel mills in Pittsburgh. You have shipyards in Richmond, Kaiser, of course. And so he takes over for Merrithew, starts the residency program. The first uh, general practice residency was supposedly at Montefiore Hospital in New York City. It was a big step in training for doctors. Up until then, all a doctor did was go to medical school for 4 years and directly after medical school do a rotating internship, and that was it. So this was adding at least an extra year uh, to the 5 years. Uh, uh, and so he needed slave labor, and one of the early residents coming in 1953 was Rudy Leong, who is with us today. Um, uh, and Rudy's here with Gladys Dosh, who was still there when I came in 1972. While Rudy was there, Dr. Degnan uh, had and supervised the building of the third county hospital at the base of the hill where the old hospital was. And this was the face of that hospital, the one I knew when I came in 1972. Um, and this is Rudy's graduating class. And George is still alone teaching all these residents. And his hair is not white. None of these graduating photos are marked as to what year they were, unfortunately. And so this is the color of George's hair is a marker of what year. Um, so George Degnan still alone. Um, uh, uh, and now you can see just a touch of white. And then this class is Bud Gleffy. So now George realizes he needs some help teaching, and so Bud Gleffy stays on. Dr. Gleffy had a son, Dan, uh, who was the first of many parent-child uh, 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 traditions in the county. Um, and one of his first requests was for a pathologist that would drive him crazy when he'd take out a tumor and not be able to tell what kind it was. And he needed to be doing autopsies as well uh, uh, to understand what was going on medically. This was resisted by the Board of Supervisors, who said that he should just treat the living. Um, in the mid 50s, you have Dr. Gleffy, and he is joined by two more doctors, registrars, as George called them, using British terminology for young doctors that have joined the staff. And so now you can see the hair. Uh, and I'm going to call this the first generation of registrars from the 50s. Um, and then we're going to look at the accumulation of new doctors that will be here in the 60s, the second generation, and that's Walt Carr, who was a resident we're all familiar with. He was a special informal specialist in parasitology and infestations, and he made a number of amazing diagnoses. And if you ever went to his house, it looked like a science museum. Um, and this is Alan Casebolt, who'd been a missionary in the Congo in the 1950s, and he swear that he saw early AIDS. It was just called the wasting disease. Um, and of course, you have the first generation still going. And this is Walt Carr with Dr. Degnan on rounds in the 1950s. Um, so notice, of course, we have a woman. This is probably just before they head off to the St. Francis Yacht Club to celebrate the graduation. And so the second generation is here with Walt Carr. We don't uh, have Alan Casebolt in this picture. And then you've added Saul Gong and Ran Fujimoto, who were also second generation registrars from the 60s. This might be Kent Sack. I'm not 100% sure. Um, the another woman a little bit later, and now in the late 1960s, you add Jay Aiken and Kent Hobart. And I'll say a lot more about him later. Um, the third woman, and this is around 1970. You have Alan Casebolt and clearly in the picture now, along with Jay. I can't mention everybody, but uh, well, in the interest of time, we'll go on. And then the fourth woman, 1977, she smashes the glass ceiling, Kate Bennett. And this is me, registrar, Dr. Dagnan peeking in, Walt Carr. And I think this is John Rose. I'm going to mention him especially because in our 2010 reunion, he volunteered to interview Jay Aiken, as we wanted to get the interviews with the 1950s and 60s people. John, I'll say more about John later. He's here, by the way. Um, and in the 1980s, no more glass ceiling, and we enter certainly a new era. And of course, this is Sharon Heiner, who's here today, along with uh, uh, Diane Dakin, Meg McLeod. Who am I missing? I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody. Um, and so this is in 2010. These are the survivors from the 1950s, Brian Lee and Jim Lynch. Um, and Jim was the one who accepted me into the residency. Uh, a fondness of heart. We have some video from the 2010 that we're eventually going to splice into this presentation. So we interviewed Brian Lee and Jim Lynch, Jay Aiken, and Rudy Leong. So those interviews, oral history. So because of Dr. Dagnan's training, the residency program in the early years was heavy on trauma and orthopedists. I throw this slide into my uh, uh, long time buddy Al Loosely. He and I bonded the first year of med school, and we um, uh, alphabetically placed next to each other quite often, and we bonded on the basketball court in particular. He went on and became a registrar in orthopedics, and moved on using that as a base into sports medicine. But it was really the way I saw him practice. It was really rehab medicine, especially born after World War II with so many wounded military. Um, uh, and so he's no longer with us. Sam Gross was a registrar in the orthopedics that taught us. Uh, of course, there's Burholz, and we have with us today Sam Richards, who learned how to do Burholz. Uh, One of the answers to the questionnaire, which many of you filled out, thank you, was when Walt Collier and I put in Burholz 15 minutes within 15 minutes after a patient blew a pupil. We put it in under local, and the patient woke up on the table. Um, this is Evan Pulvers, who happened to be a young girl in the town where Sam Richards was practicing. She was, and the whole town was so inspired by Sam's abilities that she was inspired to become a family practitioner and to come here. So this is a unique old timer, young timer pairing. Um, uh, so George goes on. Let's pick up his story. Uh, in addition to training general practice residents, he went on to build a forward-looking, dynamic medical care system that was systems-based. And where did he get this idea? Well, he from Canada and Great Britain, where they both have systems that provide universal health care. Also, he knew that medicine didn't stop at the hospital. He carried it out into the community. Uh, so important to follow up discharged patients, so important to meet the patient in their area and prevent them from needing hospitalization. So he is being honored here for 15 years of service. And the Board of Supervisors did not always appreciate George's forward-leaning uh, system. He often ran over budget, and we'll hear more about that in the 70s. He buddied up with a prominent politician, not just local, but he was a state senator and the right-hand man to Pat Brown, who eventually became governor, was elected twice, and of course his son Jerry also was elected twice as governor. So um, uh, George, always thinking of the community and the whole system, realized that one of the heaviest burdens on a family is a disabled kid, and it makes it hard for the family to get outside of the home and earn an income, and also just for respite. So he and Miller started the Miller Centers, which still exist today. Um, uh, Now, in the 1970s, George started some small clinics, and he fostered the idea of prepayment or capitation uh, to eliminate the inefficiencies of fee-for-service billing. Um, uh, and that culminated in the first federally qualified public um, HMO in the country in 1974. And all of us, of course, are familiar working within that system. Again, thanks to Steve Marin for this slide. Uh, where did he get the idea of prepayment and eliminating fee for service? Well, he'd been in Canada and Britain, as we say, but also George had a love of ships, having gone to high school in Richmond and worked in the docks through high school and college. And of course, Kaiser built the Victory ships in Richmond, and he set up. Here's a Victory ship. Um, and he set up for his workers, Rosie the Riveter, great museum in Richmond. He set up for his workers uh, prepaid health care, capitated health care. So there's not going to be any fee for service billing of this fellow in the hospital. Uh, uh, and of course, Kaiser, with Sidney Garfield, the doctor behind the idea, thought that it would be a good model for the whole country. Uh, uh, anyway, George Degnan, I'm going to argue, had started the chain, and it went through George Miller the second, and the link in the chain now is George Miller the third, who was Nancy Pelosi's um, right-hand man in many efforts, including the one for Obamacare. So he had Degnan's ear. I'm sorry, he had um, Barack Obama's ear. Uh, and Barack Obama personally thanked him for helping pass the legislation. Here's George Miller the third, and this is in the showcase up in the family practice clinic on the Hill. George couldn't have done it without you. Um, so Miller just reinforced the linkage between the Millers and George Degnan. Um, George Miller III had entered into the congressional record this statement in 1991. It talks about his entrusted friend, valued advisor to both himself and his father, instrumental in shaping healthcare system, as we've said. Uh, Even in retirement, he's been a relentless advocate for improved availability, uh, etc. Join me in paying tribute to Dr. Degnan. But 1991, we were in the midst of the battle for a new county hospital, and Dr. Degnan was against the new county hospital. What he preferred was um, three county hospitals for each section of the county to increase availability and the hardship of traveling to Martinez to see for families see hospitalized patients. It was his idealism, but it was a complex story, and he wanted to leverage the community hospitals that existed at the time in all three parts of the county hospital. The problem was that community hospital system withered and no longer exists. Um, the I'll come back to that controversy when we get to the 1990s. By the way, this is the only father and son bridge. This bridge was built in honor of George Miller II, who died suddenly during the heart attack epidemic of the 50s and 60s. He died a young man in the 60s. And this bridge carries his name. This is used to be the only bridge, but then they two-way bridge, but then they changed it to one-way, and this way, and then they built a second bridge to improve the flow of traffic. And this is named after George Miller the third. In the middle is a railroad bridge that was first built, and you could see the building of that bridge. Terrible slide, sorry. In one of the murals, this railroad bridge was built in 1935, and it put Port Costa out of business. The train used to dead end in Port Costa, and the cargo would be placed on ferry boats and taken over to uh, Benicia. Um, the 1960s, you've also seen pictures. This is a summary slide of 8 more registrars added, roughly in chronological order. I've mentioned them all except for Herb Sigmund, who I'm gonna mention because he was an inspiration to many doctors for looking outward to a global focus. Uh, uh, so at our reunion in 2010, in addition to having the old timers from the 50s, we had Rudy Leong and Jay Aiken. And this is as they were at um, uh, the 60th uh, anniversary. Um, and we're going to put in some video clips at some point. And this is Herb. He was a couple of years ahead of me at UCSF. He'd been to visit Albert Schweitzer and always had a outward looking wanderlust, really. But he was involved in responding to international disasters. Um, and a free spirit, for sure, that enchanted a number of us. Um, and then this gets us to a more detailed story of Ken Hobart, who graduated in 1968. This was an on-call kind of spoof graduation night. Uh, and here is a class of 1973. This is Jay, who's helped me with the organized concepts of the reunion going back quite a few years on what we might do with a questionnaire. And of course, this is Dr. Hobart again. Um, and uh, this is Dr. Hobart in 2010. He woke up one morning paralyzed. This is John Rose. I'll get back to him. He's here today. Um, and he woke up one morning paralyzed, and he just decided he would overcome uh, his new challenge. And this was what was rigged up for him to be able to continue to operate and use his gifts of surgery um, uh, uh, strapped into a dolly contraption. Um, the community. He also continued to have a private practice, was well known in the community as he was part-time um, uh, registrar for our residency program. So this is the panel we had in 2010, the 50s generation and the 60s. Um, uh, Great discussion. And then the early 70s, Mark Will joins the staff and becomes a real critical keystone in our residency program as Dr. Degnan fades. Um, the outward looking part of the our system. Uh, we had a resident who Kinnery Webb, who went abroad and started a amazing clinic in Indonesia that is integrated with the community and the economy. And it's this is her with an OB patient. It's very appropriate. Roger Barrow was visiting at the time, and Roger set the record for continuation of practicing obstetrics out of the family practice clinic. So Roger was a real role model for the ideal family practitioner. Um, then at the end of the 70s, we have John Stanger, who's here today. He joined the ER staff, and he later became the residency director. And then in outward-looking global awareness tradition, went to Bosnia and Kosovo, and eventually went to a divinity school, which put him in an excellent position to uh, be the chairman of the ethics committee. Um, and this is just some coverage of the trips that he made to the Balkans, um, in Bosnia, Kosovo. Um, and this is John abroad, um, and uh, the shielding of the clinic from shrapnel, um, field hospital, uh, Kosovo. Roger, as part of the tsunami relief effort. Um, and then Neil Jayasekaran was the founder of the Global Health Fellowship. So we have a crystallization of this global awareness. And I hope we're going to have these story circles. One of them will be uh, Neil and Matt talking about the fellowship. Um, and he served many places abroad, including Sri Lanka, which was poignant because that's his Neil's heritage. Um, I mentioned the Gleffys as a multi-generation pairing, and here's John and his daughter Callie, of course. And then there's in addition to that, there's residency romance. So the Stanger family also weighs in on that with Callie's marriage to Matt. And both of them have been very much involved in the fellowship and the global focus. Um, Other romances, folks here today, um, uh, uh, Gabe Malin and Sarah Lamanusi. They were here at the 2010 residency. They were practicing up in Klamath Falls. I had the pleasure of visiting them there. And then also here today is Christy Schold with uh, her fellow resident, Neil Jorgensen, the class of 1993. And since then, there have been many more pairings, and I'm just kind of covering the up to the year 2000. Okay, so Continuing on, I have to mention Naaman Shah, a very ambitious fellow who wound up in India, practicing on really the People's Health Support Group, almost a commune. Uh, he came back and delivered a university quality talk on malaria. It was quite amazing. And here's Neil on the left-hand side there. Um, and then I want to get back to George Degnan's final decade in the hospital and the residency program. He talked about the responsibility of getting involved politically, and he certainly did. Um, uh, and he reached the point where he was fighting with the Board of Supervisors so much over budget overruns that he said, I want you guys to form a union and force me to do what I want to do. So he used the union as yet another um, tool in his armamentarium. He got fired in 1973 for budget overruns from his expansion in the 1960s. But uh, the union organized. We marched, and there's some of us, Jay Aiken, next to the signs there with a beard at the time, and I had a beard at the time over on the left-hand side. Um, and then Degnan pulled all his political strings and throughout the county and in West County. It was with African American ministers. He had a strong core of Latino supporters in Pittsburgh, and he could fill the chambers, the Board of Supervisors downtown, and they backed off the chief administrator's um, recommendation that Degnan be fired. Uh, so then we get to switching to family practice clinic. And we needed to convert to family practice to survive. Family practice had come on the scene in 1969 when I was heading off to the Indian reservation. And Degnan said, "Well, we already do that. We talk about sex and money," and and then he objected, a superficial objection, tongue in cheek. What about folks without a family? And then he said, okay, we'll just change the sign in the outpatient clinic to call it family practice clinic. Well, that wasn't going to be enough, and we were rejected the first time around. And so George finally bonded with the chairman of the family practice department at UC Davis, and ultimately it became part of the UC Davis network. Uh, I got to know Dr. Andrus because George tapped me for getting involved with their family nurse practitioner program. But George and Hughes had war stories to tell because Andrus had uh, left undergraduate school as part of a program to accelerate the training of medical students in national emergencies. So just like Degnan got a crash course in trauma surgery, so did Hughes. Andis. And Hughes convinced George that he needed to do more structural changes. And the main problem was getting a designated psychologist as part of the residency program. So 1980s, I think George had gone, and that's another story which I can tell in a separate session. The county hospital was treated for refusing the ward bed plan. And what was that? Um, this is Kate Bennett, who then was medical staff president. She's holding the plaque, along with Diane Dakin, who's here, and me peering in from the corner. And uh, uh, what was that? The New York Times reported that our medical staff had rebuffed the Pentagon. And the idea was all hospitals were supposed to develop a plan at which they could very quickly produce 30 more beds somewhere in nooks and crannies of the hospital. And why? It was to save and receive and treat victims of radiation from nuclear warfare. And uh, we took a principled stand on that, that preparing for war like that would make it more likely and horrible. Our stance was picked up by the Hastings Center Ethics magazine, which devoted an issue to what we had done. We only found out about it accidentally when Mark Will was on vacation and happened to be at meet someone from the Hastings Center. As soon as he found out we were, he was from Contra Costa, was treated like a celebrity, and this just describes the position that we took. I'd like to spend more time, but we got to move on. So the physician is moral leader. Um, and this was Kate was the face of it, but I have to say something about Catherine Smith, who by that time was at least in her late 70s. And she was the TV doctor in tuberculosis clinic. And she got us all to join this organization, the Physicians for Social Responsibility, which were among about 40 NGOs who backed this effort and were mentioned when the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded for the organizations that opposed a nuclear war. Um, uh, so we could spend a whole hour talking about that chapter. Um, so it was Kate Bennett, and she took pride in practicing cowboy medicine, embraced it. The one thing, uh, uh, it was a style of medicine with registrars that George Dignan was forced to take because there were so few doctors who were willing to drive out to Martinez to help the county take care of its indigent patients. So Kate embraced it, and in real life, she owned a horse and rode frequently. Um, so problem. In the 80s, it was clear we needed a new county hospital. We had a leaky roof. When it rained, there were all kinds of Rube Goldberg contraptions that drained the water away. uh, and where to locate it. Eventually, the battle kind of roared low key in the 80s, but uh, really went viral in 1995. A lot of Sturm and Drang fighting back and forth. And eventually, by the bare minimum of votes, the proposal to build the new county hospital that we sit in the shadow of today materialized. Jeff Smith was on the board of supervisors by that time, and he could tell that story in what we're going to call story circles later on. It was the swing vote of Marc de Saulnier. So Jeff, of course, was a solid yes, and then the representative from Pittsburgh, Tom Torlakson, was always a yes vote. But de Saulnier was a swing vote and a very dramatic confrontation with Mike Wall, the CEO of what was then Mount Diablo Hospital, now called John Muir Hospital, second campus. Um, Desaulniers asked the CEO if he was going to sign a check, a good faith check, um, uh, uh, which went with it the obligation to take care of all the county patients, including the jail patients and the psych patients. And when push came to shove, Wall refused to sign and the check, and the vote was taken. I put this photo of it's the one I have from the 2010 that shows Kent Hobart speaking about how anguishing it was to go through this battle with George Degnan on the other side. As I say, he was taking a very idealistic position that just wasn't practical, and subsequent events showed that the community hospitals could not be relied on to take county patients. And so that was hard on Kent personally, and especially for him, it was hard on everybody. But he was a neighbor of George Degnan, and of course, they bonded as Kent fought his battles, um, uh, and his. We have a clip of that will be inserted into this presentation at some point. So just a few words about activism in the 70s and 80s. Uh, we've always had that as a tradition. I've got some old slides I'm going to put in here. And this is Joe Selby. He went on to have a very successful career in research, but first he practiced in the inner city at the San Antonio Clinic in Oakland. And he eventually wanted to do research. He went to Kaiser and using their system and their documentation and their prepaid system, he was able to come up with the first smoking gun evidence to strongly recommend flexible sigmoidoscopy to prevent colon cancer. Um, and this is John Rose. I promised he'd reappear. You've seen pictures of him earlier. He was an activist against cigarette smoking. Um, uh, which was maybe in a story circle, he can tell that full story. And this is him, as I showed earlier. He was featured in Time magazine as the doctor who went to the underserved area of Brownsville, where he still is. He's comes down periodically for recruiting purposes, but this describes his practice in Brownsville. And then Naaman, mentioned earlier, he had this article published in India, criticizing while he was in India, the Indian response to COVID. In a magazine that's the equivalent of the Atlantic, a publication like that in India. Medical politics, a few quick words here. Jeff, who's with us today, he went down first for a medical position in Santa Clara, but moved up the chain, became the county CEO. And of course, they were the point people in COVID. I think that in the background is Sarah Cody. You can tell me if that's true. She was the medical officer that made the first recommendations for social distancing. Um, and Chris Farnatano, very much involved in the COVID response. His house was picketed by extremists opposed to any kind of encroachment on their freedom during the COVID epidemic. Um, Finally, I just a thank you to Aaron Strada. We were sitting across from each other at lunch, and we got on the topic of the history of this place and what a colorful community and heritage we have. So she invited me to talk to her whole graduating class. And that's something I've continued to do. Instead of talking to the graduating class, I've been asked to talk to the new residents when they start the residency, so they know the background before they start instead of when they leave. And Aaron responded to the questionnaire and she had some nice things to say about her experience here. She's with Doctors Without Borders, particularly using ultrasound, and her day job is at a big public hospital in the ER in Brooklyn. Thank you. The rewards of being a generalist, I'll just end with something John Stanger found presented in one of his seminars, a clip from Dr. Schwago. This is Yuri Schwago is a medical student about to graduate. He's being recruited by a surgeon. And he says, no, I don't want to be a surgeon. I want to treat the whole patient and experience, even the messy part. Uh, thank you. Just to remind you who's been talking, I appreciate your attention.